2-9 percents. So our objective for this section is to solve percent problems in two different methods, by using proportions and by using the percent equation. The essential understanding is that we can solve problems involving percents using either proportions or the percent equation, which are closely related. If you write a percent as a fraction, you can use a proportion to solve a percent problem. Okay, so let's start with the percent proportion. We can represent A is P percent of B using the percent proportion shown below. In the proportion, B is the base, A is the part of base B. So we can see with this algebraic expression is that we have A over B, the part over the base, is equal to the percent over the 100. One way to try to remember this is that we can do is over of is equal to percent over 100. In both of these equations, we see we have 100 in the bottom right over there. And we're going to be given two of the other variables. Okay, so out of these three, A, B, or P, or is or of or 100, we have to have two of them. And that's usually what's going to happen when we try to solve one of these problems. So we have what percent of 56 is 42. So if I want to use my percent proportion, we'd have A over B is equal to P over 100, okay? Or is over of is equal to the percent over 100. Either one of these to think about is okay. All right, so the base in this case is 56, and the part is 42, okay? Or is 42, of is 56. So my percent proportion is going to look like 42 over 56 is equal to some percent over 100. Okay? And then when we calculate this, we're going to calculate it the same way as I would have done any other proportion. We're going to cross multiply. So we're going to go 42 times 100 to give me 4200 is equal to 56p. Divide both sides by 56, and we get that p is equal to 75, which is a percent because that's what we're solving for. We're solving for a percent. So the answer would be 75%. Okay, let's look at our got it problem. Is over of. So 54 over 90 is equal to my percent over 100. Okay? So again, cross multiply, 5400 is equal to 90p. And then we divide both sides by 90. And we get that 60 is equal to p. So my answer becomes 60%. Okay? And that's the percent proportion. So in problem 1, we use the percent proportion to find the percent. When you write P over 100 as P percent and solve for A, you get an equation that looks kind of like this. A is equal to some percent times B, right? If I just think of that as one term. This equation is called the percent equation. And we can use either the percent equation or the percent proportion to solve any percent problem. So to use the percent equation, we can represent A is P percent of B using the percent equation shown below, where A is the part of the base B. So we have the part is equal to some percent times some number. So what percent of 50 is 25? So we would take this percent times 50 times the base, okay, times the of, and it's equal to 25. Okay? And in our model right here, we can see that we have 25 as what percent of 50. So let's, in this problem, in this example, let's use the equation instead of the proportion. So A is equal to some P percent times the base. Okay, so, right, this is my answer. 2.5 is equal to some percent times 40. And to solve this, all I do is divide each side by 40. So divide out the 40. So now I get 2.5 divided by 40 gives me 0.0625. Okay. Now the trick to using the percent equation is you take this answer and write it as a percent. So for now, we would just multiply by 100 or move the decimal points 2 spots to the right to give me 6.25%. Okay. This problem, or this method, is a little different because it's going to give you it's going to give you a decimal answer, and you're going to have to change it to a percent. Okay. So what percent of 84 is 63? So 63 is going to equal to some percent times 84. So 63 over 84 gives me 0.75 is equal to some percent. And now I have to change that to a percent to give me 75%. Okay? The only trick to this method is to remember, again, to change it from a decimal to a percent. Okay? So finding a part. When we're finding a part, it's usually a little easier to find the to use the percent equation. Okay, so a dress shirt normally costs $38.50 is on sale for 30% off. What is the sale price of the shirt? So what we're doing is we're finding the part. Okay, we have the base, that's going to be $38.50, and we have my percent. So that's 30% times $38.50. Okay. Now, when we use the percent equation, same thing is that we can't plug a percentage into the percent equation. So what we're going to have to do is change that to a decimal. Okay. And we're going to take 0.3 times 38.50. And it gives me 11.55. Okay. So now the trick is to figure out that this is 30% off of the shirt. So if we are going to take if we're going to take $11 off of the shirt, right? If it's on sale for 30% off, we just found 30% of the shirt. 30% of the shirt is $11.55. So we're going to have to take, to get my price, we're going to have to take $38.50 minus the $11.55. And we're going to get $26.95. $26.95. Okay? That is one method to do this. There's another trick to this, okay? And you could get right to this answer if you use this trick. And that is if you realize that the price of the shirt is 30% off, if you're starting at 100%, if you take 30% off, the shirt now costs 70% of what it did before, right? Because if you, right, 100% is the whole shirt. If we take 30% off of that, we're left with a total of 70%. So now if I use my percent equation, A is equal to 0.7 times 38.50, I would get 26.95. 95. Okay? So I can get right to the answer if I realize that I can use the relationship between what the sale, how much we're taking off, and how much is actually left on the shirt. Okay? Let's try a got it problem. A family sells a car to a dealership for 60% less than they paid for it. They paid $9,000 for the car. Okay? So if we think about this, right, that's the discount that the family's selling the car to the dealership for, which means the cost after the discount is applied is going to be 40%. So that's how much the the family is going to get for their car. So we can now just solve this, right? Let's use the same letters. That A is equal to some percent times my base, and that A is going to be zero point 0.4 times 9,000, which gives me a total of 3,600. Okay, so the family is going to get $3,600 for their car. Now we could have done this. We could have done 60% times 9,000, and then we would get 5,400. Now you have to realize that 5,400 is the amount that the discount is. So you take 9,000 minus 5,400 to get 3,600. Okay. So let's try finding a base with my percent equation. So again, actually let's do both methods. Okay. Let's do the percent equation and let's do the percent proportion. So A is equal to some percent times my base, which means that 17.5, right, because this is the answer, is equal to 125% as a decimal is 1.25 times some base. Divide out the 1.25 and we get 14. Let's set this up with the percent proportion. So remember that the percent proportion is over of is the percent over 100. There's my is of what equals the percent over 100. So with problems like this, where we have a straight question with a bunch of numbers in it, sometimes it's easier to do the percent proportion because I don't have to remember to change that to a decimal. Okay, I can leave it as a percent, as whatever number I see, the percentage. Okay, so in this case again, cross multiply and divide, and you will get 14 again. Okay, let's look at our got it problem. 30% of what number is 12.5? So 12.5 is equal to 0.3 times some number. Or if I want to set it up with a percent proportion, we would go is 12.5 over of is equal to the percent over 100. Okay? And both of these methods will lead us to the answer 12.5 divided by zero point 0.3 gives me 41.6. Okay. And same thing here, 12.5 times 100 gives me 1250 equals 30x divided by 30, and we get the same thing. X is 41.6. Okay. So a common application of percents is simple interest, which is interest that you earn only on the principal in an account. The simple interest formula is given below, where I is interest, P is principal, the amount of money you start with, and R is the annual interest rate written as a decimal, very important, and T is the time in years. So I equals PRT, interest equals principal times rate times time. And if you invest $50 at an interest rate of, so you're going to have three of these, 50 bucks, 3.5%, 3 years. Multiply them all together, and we have the uh, the interest, how much interest you earn, which means then you would take the 50 bucks and you would add this to it, and that's how much money you would have in your account. Now, this is useful, okay? In Algebra 2, you'll learn a little bit more about compound interest, which is really the way the world works. Okay? But for now, we'll stick with simple interest. And when you solve problems involving percents, it's helpful to know fraction equivalents for common percents. You can then use the fractions to check your answers for reasonableness. Here are some common percents represented as fractions. 1%, 1 over 100, 5%, 1 over 20, 10%, 1 over 10, 20% is a fifth, 25% is a fourth, 33% is 1/3, a half, 2/3, 3/4, and 1. Okay, so you should kind of know all those. So you deposited $840 in a savings account that earned simple interest rate of 4.5% a year. You want to keep the money in the account for 4 years. How much interest will you earn? Is your answer reasonable? Well, let's check it out. So I is equal to principal times rate times time. So the interest that I earn is equal to the principal, the amount of money I start with, my interest rate, 0.045 as a decimal, and time, 4 years. So we should expect a decent amount of money in 4 years, but not a lot. So we just do 840 times 0.05 times 4, and we get that the interest that I earn is 151.20. Makes sense. Not too much, not too little. So same thing, interest equals principal times rate times time. My interest rate, or my interest earned, is going to be the principal, 125. And a savings account earns simple interest rate of 1.75% a year, 0.0175. Move the decimal 2 spots to the left. Oh, and we earned a total of $875 in interest. How long was your money in the account? So now we know how much interest I earned, $875, and I want to solve for T. Not so bad. 125 times 0.0175 gives me 875 is equal to 2.1875, and then just divide that out. Okay? So 875 divided by that answer gives me 4 years, right? And time in this particular equation is going to be years. Okay? So, quick summary. So to find a percent, what percent of 6.3 is 3.5? If the percent proportion is over of equals the percent over 100, or 3.5 is equal to some percent times 6.3. And remember, this will spit you out a decimal answer, so change it to percent. What is 32% of 125? A over 125 is equal to 32 over 100. There's my proportion. Or A is equal to, got to change this to a decimal to work with it, 0.32 times 125. Percent of what is 11? So now the percent proportion is going to be 11 over B is equal to 25 over 100. And same thing now. Now my answer, my part is going to be on the left-hand side. Okay, so set these up real quick. 21 over 70 is equal to some percent over 100. Same thing with this one, 35% of 80. So that is going to be x over 80 is equal to 35 over 100. 75% of what number is 36? Let's go down here. So I don't know of, so that's going to be 36 over x is equal to 75 over 100. Let's do these again with the percent equation. So that's going to be 21 is equal to p times 70 as a decimal. Same thing for the second one. So this becomes a is equal to 0.35 times 80. And the last one is going to be 36 is equal to 0.75 times something. Okay, so the hardest part about these problems is setting them all up. How much interest will you earn by investing? So interest is 1200 times 0.025 times 6. Complete. Percent P is equivalent to a fraction with a numerator of P and a denominator of 100. Okay, that's why this actually works, right? When you're going back and forth between these two, you need to remember which is a percent and which is a representation of a fraction. You deposit money in a savings account paying 4% simple interest per year. The first year you earn $75 in interest. How much interest will you earn during the following year? Well, simple interest means that you are always going to get the same amount. So you're always going to get 75%. What's nice about compounded interest is now that this $75 is in your account, the next year you will earn more interest. That's the difference between simple interest and compounded interest. Give an example of a percent problem where the part is greater than the base. Well, if I have this, let's do 150 over 100 is equal to some percent over 100. Well, very clear here that the answer is going to be 150. Okay, and even bigger with simpler numbers, let's just do this. 4 over 2 is equal to some percent over 100. The answer there would be 4 times 100 divided by 2. It would be 200. The percent would be 200. Okay, and that is 2-9%.